I know him very well after about 5 minutes, by the way, and I knew that he was a person of great, well, how can I put it, of great interest to me. I knew that he was the real deal, you know. I just latched onto him like a barnacle. And it went from, you know, a student and master kind of mentor, father figure, well, actually sort of tyrant, terrifying musical giant lording over me. Then it went to musical associate, because we started working together, you know, when I was 25 years old or so. He did not make it easy on me to start interacting in that way. He was very cautious, and he was very formal, and he demanded things. You know, when I asked him to record from that album Straight Up, which was the first thing I recorded as a leader, he really made it hard on me to get him lined up to do it. And he wanted to know the this, that, the other thing, how are we getting paid, who's in charge of the publishing. And he was concerned with, he's always been concerned with those details, but he was pouring it on to try to man me up and make sure I knew that I was not at his level. I wasn't harboring any illusions that I was at his level. And in fact, he crafted that entire first album himself. I think all of the arrangements and tune concepts, with maybe one exception, were delivered by him. And truthfully, that's the way a lot of our musical interaction went. For years and years and years, he just put me on his shoulders and carried me around, and sort of tolerated me, but thought that I had potential. And it's just amazing to think that we went from that to, he was really my best friend. And he was the person, I used to tell my ex-wife, I almost felt guilty. I spent more time with him than I did even with her. I was with him almost every day of my life. And I mean, the level that we got to, it's kind of indescribable. I don't really know. It's almost making me get teary. Don't know what to say.
Okay, well, we'll put you on hold for a second here.
I'm okay. I'm just going to stop talking about it.
Okay.
I've you know, in those, trying to explain it, what happens is I listen to myself trying to explain how I feel about him, and then I get emotional.
Very fortunate, because just so you know, this music was created in this country, so you're very fortunate. However, sometimes it's more appreciated all over the world, but it was created here.
I just realized just how absolutely spot on his feel is, whether he's playing solo piano or whether he's playing with a trio. I mean, you know, everything swings, just everything, the groove is just always locked in. And I think that was one thing that really made a big impression on me as a young, impressionable pianist, you know, in New York, getting to hear him play in Bradley's and different places, but just how strong his groove and his pocket was. He was always about getting as much sound out of the piano as possible, you know, and it didn't matter if it was a great piano, you know, a beautiful 9-foot Steinway or like a crappy upright. It didn't make any difference. Harold got the same basic sound out of any instrument he played.
As soon as he sat down and played, you know, it was one of those examples that I heard and thought, man, this is how I'd like to be able to play. You know, with a lot of feeling. The blues was there, and then the intellect was there.
To play this music, you got to be a thinker. You have to think fast, quick on your feet.
He was just a total package, and that's you know, exhibited by the different people that he played with, especially the singers.
His encyclopedic knowledge of music not only the jazz standards and the Great American Songbook, but everything, around that as well. All the Broadway tunes and movie themes, TV show themes. I mean, I was just listening to a record of his that he made a few years ago, and he's playing Making Our Dreams Come True, which was the theme show from Laverne and Shirley. And he would play, something from Phantom of the Opera.
When you get yourself involved with jazz, even if you don't play, if you take a course in jazz appreciation, being a jazz musician will teach you how to make decisions in your real life. It might sound funny because you got to be very perceptive. You got to be very ubiquitous in your thoughts and how you make decisions and stuff. So every day I wake up, I said, "Dear Lord, thank you for making me a jazz musician." Because I didn't choose it. It chose me, as I said before, not to be redundant. We all are born with some special kind of gift. But it's up to you to find out what it is. And when it comes, sometimes it might be just a quick flash. You got to grab it.
He was one of those masters, could play anything that he heard, in his head.
But he cared more about, he knew that the people loved him. And he always told me, "Eric, don't play for the cats, play for the people." And he said, even more, "You can't print this, play for the bitches." That's what he said all the time. He said, "I don't like playing for all these old greasy men. There's a freaking boys club in here. I want to see some beautiful women. Ava Gardner, that's right."
Walking by, I think I was going from the Blue Note and I was approaching Sweet Basil's on the way to the Vanguard, and I got stopped in my tracks because I heard someone playing these Gut Bucket Barrel House blues on piano, like super funky. And then I saw the sign, they said Eddie Cleanhead Vincent. And then when I looked in there, it was Mabe on piano. I said, okay, well, that makes sense. I mean, he was just killing it, and it was like, for him, it was just breathing, just playing the blues.
The blues form is the first thing you learn when you start playing jazz, I saw my baby walking down the desert 145. But as you get older, you realize it becomes the hardest. Why? Because you can't teach somebody how to play the blues. You would think you can't do it. I could write down some notes, but it's not the same. It has to come from here. So when we started, we hated the blues. We wanted to play bebop. But as we grew older, we realized how important the blues is. See, jazz comes from the blues, not the other way around. The great Dizzy Gillespie, the co-progenitor of this music, said the difference between me and Bird is Charlie Parker. He said, Bird could play the blues and I couldn't. He's right. He could play the blues. He could play a blues lick. You see, the blues, like there's a great pianist named Gene Harris. Anybody ever heard of Gene Harris?
Yeah.
Now, if I could play the blues like him, I could stick my chest out. Now, he could play the blues, and he said one time, "I'm a blues piano player with chops." People ask me, I said, "I'm a blues piano player that understands the philosophy of jazz," which means I can play the blues, I can play the boogie-woogie, but I can also play the old milestone. I can also play a night in Tunisia. So the blues is very special because all over the world, no matter what your nationality is, people understand the blues.
There's a reason you can go from playing with Wes Montgomery to Joe Williams to Miles Davis to Lee Morgan, you name it. And that means you got something going on, because that's pretty diverse and different, ends of the spectrum from a jazz standpoint alone.
This music comes from what I call the university of the streets. You don't have to go to school to learn it. Going to school is just an enhancement. You know what I mean? I'm a proof of that.
I never felt like he was doing it to show you I can do this, I can do that. It was just who he was. There was no pretentiousness there in the person, no pretentiousness there in his playing.
He was first and foremost a very decent, he was an absolutely decent human being. He was honorable. He took care of the people he cared about and who were genuine, who he could see right through people. He knew immediately if you were full of crap. If you weren't full of crap and you were coming for help, he would give you everything. He took care of his wife when she was ill for 10 years. He didn't even play. He could have passed away during that period. He didn't give a shit.
I think the thing that moved me and touched me the most about Harold Mabern is the love he showed for his family and especially his wife. It sounds like a typical cliche, but she later in her later years and when she got sick, just how she was first before the music. He just really took care of her.
When I got to New York as an 18-year-old, I remember Harold, and I was playing Bradley's at the time, and Harold came every single night, and he would sit there right in front. Not only was he just extremely supportive and positive towards young pianists. I mean, I'm just one of many.
There were 4 other young guys, and I'm happy to say that they're all still on the planet. They were bad then, and they're even badder now. When I say bad, I mean good. And if you think you can play, that includes me. Let me give you their names. One of the young guys' name is Herbert. One of the guys' name is Alfred, first name. The other guy's name is Armando, and the other guy's name is Keith. Now, who are those 4 guys? Come on, folks, you're jazz fans. Who are those 4 guys? Herbert, Alfred, Armando, Keith. That's Herbert.
He never, and I mean it, he never judged anyone other than he never looked at people other than that they were an individual, not a representative of a race or gender, any of that. And it's the most noble, type of human being you can possibly imagine, because I would accept if he harbored resentment. He has every right to, but he's like a saint. He's literally like a saint. He never engaged in that kind of stuff.
Now, I got home this morning, turned the radio on, hear favorite thing, Live and Smoke. Then I hear something that I ain't heard in 50 years, a song I wrote for Richard Powell called Richard's Dilemma. I said, I hope somebody said Harold Mabern done died. I said, kind of scared me for a minute, 2 in a row.
The best part about him, he was just an even better human being. He used to say that about John Coltrane. He said, you guys love John Coltrane because he's the greatest tenor player ever. He said, I love John Coltrane. He was an even better human being. That's true about Harold, too. I'm not even thinking about his chords. I'm just thinking about what kind of a person he was.
I didn't know he did it that long. And that's pretty amazing because, he wasn't doing that for the money. You can tell as the students that I encountered over the years that were able to have him as a teacher, he did it for the love of those students, first and foremost.
Every single person he touched will never forget him, ever. And they're all over the world.
He inspired and mentored dozens of young pianists.
But, last night I played in Philadelphia. We had a great time. Robin Eubanks, John Swan, and myself in the rhythm section. And I decided, you know what, Eric, you always keep your lips zipped. You don't go tell people what they need to work on because you don't want to piss them off. I said, I'm not going to do that tonight. If some of these younger musicians are missing something, I'll see what happens. I'm going to do a Harold Mabern because that's what he would want. And, I just went to, the piano player and said, right there, you didn't play, that's not the right chord and that's not the right melody. Let me show you what it is. I'm not trying to be superior. I just know because Harold showed me, I want to show you. I didn't know how that would turn out. Today, they sent messages. Thank you so much. Nobody ever takes the time to explain what's right and wrong, and I really appreciated it.
And, he was very, very healthy, took good care of himself, and he lived way out in Brooklyn, almost like by JFK. And he would often walk into the city, hour and a half, 2 hour walk. And that's how he stayed fit. And he said he started doing that in the 60s when there was a transportation strike. And he had a record date at Rudy Van Gelder's in New Jersey. And basically, if you could get yourself to the meeting point, which was somewhere on the Upper West Side, then they had a car that could take musicians across the bridge to Jersey. And Harold said, the subways were down, taxis weren't really working, so he walked all the way from his home in Brooklyn to West 79th Street or something like that.
Sleep, Bret. He would come over to my house before trips because he didn't want to go to LaGuardia from where he lived out by Kennedy. He wouldn't even go to sleep. I'd say, Harold, did you sleep? I'd make him some popcorn. Nope. I had one eye open. Cat nap. That's right. But Harold, you're going to be tired. Nope. And we'd fly to, France. He didn't sleep on the plane. He'd been up 48 hours. Fine. Nothing. Not phased. He never used an alarm clock in his life in any time zone. Say, Harold, how do you wake up? You're jet lagged. I was napping. You were napping. What did you do? He said, Most High woke me up. That's right, boy. Yeah, you said it. You meant it. You never used an alarm clock. You never used a calendar. Ever. You memorized all his dates for like 5 years. You knew all.
Last 2 times I saw him, I think the first time I could tell he wasn't feeling well because we hadn't seen each other in years, and usually maybe talk your ear off, and he was playing Smalls. This was probably about 8 months ago or something, and he left the stage, spoke, said about 2 sentences to me, and left. And I was like, man, May must not be feeling good. And so about 4 or 5 months later, I was back up there to mix my son's record, and went to Smalls again to hear him, and he was playing stronger, and he looked better. And then that's when he told me, he said, man, I've been struggling with prostate cancer, and I've been getting some treatments. So when he passed, my first thought was that it has to do with his prostate cancer, but then later I found it was a heart attack. But I remember, we talked for a while, and then we left there and went to Geoff Keezer's gig. He was playing Mesro with Denise Donatelli, and that was the last time I got to hang with him.
The last day on planet Earth that he spent, he went to William Paterson College and taught all day, inspiring young people. And you know what he went through every time to get there? Because he was frugal. I'm not going to say cheap, but he was frugal. Maybe George Goldman would say he's cheap. We have a laugh about that, but he'd take the subway to the Port Authority in a bus. It would take him 3.5 hours to get out there. Okay? And he did this for 30 years. And when he would get there, he would give everything he had, 6 or 7 private students in a row and an ensemble, and then go back to the city. Oftentimes he'd stop and smoke. And hang out all night, preaching and inspiring.
I wanted to also mention about Harold the person. I mean, very, very humble. Even though he was a pianist from the same generation, and same level of influence and greatness as McCoy Tyner and Herbie Hancock and Chick and all those guys. I mean, Harold, he never talked about himself. When he talked about pianists, he talk about everybody else. He said, man, you got to go check out Kenny Barron, or go check out Brad Meldau, or go check out, and he was just as supportive of the younger pianists as he was of his, musicians of his own generation.
If I sit here and start writing a eulogy or planning a speech, which I'm decent at doing, I can work myself up into crocodile tears and feeling mushy. But other than that, I don't even feel, and this is strange, and all of my friends who are close to him as well, we don't even feel bad. You know what we feel? Overjoyed that we were allowed to be next to this man. Harold loved being alive so much, I swear if he could have made a choice to live forever, he would have, because every minute of the day, he was happy. He used to tell me on a rainy day, 1,000, Harold, he would repeat the stories 1,000 times, not because he had memory loss, because he was beating it into your brain. He'd say, I like rainy weather. And I would say the same thing. Why? Oh, it's good for sleeping. And he'd say, no, because I make my own happiness. Most great musicians, in my experience, even the ones that have sort of Jekyll and Hyde
personalities. We know who they are. We don't have to mention it. They had an authentic warmth and caring for when they could tell that people were for real. They were nice, or they could be. But Harold, even more than anybody I've ever met, I mean, he was times the power of 10 of anybody. Nobody I've ever met gave more than he did. That's just a fact. That's not taking anything away from anybody. That's just true.
Whether on the bandstand or off the bandstand, just full on, full of life energy. Absolutely, brimming over the top with energy for life and love of music and love of people and humanity.
He was like an angel walking the earth. I can only hope to just that I've gotten enough from him that I can attempt to, can carry on a tenth of his mantle or of what he was all about. And I hope I'm able to do some of that, because I'm sure that's what he would want.
Okay, before moving on, boy, the time really went by fast. That first one must have been 20 minutes, right? Wow. So when you get caught up in the music, you don't worry about the time. You just play.